So just to begin, I'd like to welcome everyone here today. My name is Isabella and I'm the Carer Education Officer here at Connecting Foster and Kinship Carers. And I'd also like to welcome our guest speaker, Michael Place. He is an international and inspirational speaker who believes every child deserves the chance of becoming victors instead of victims. So I'm also just going to do the acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural beliefs remain important to the Kaurna people today. So now I'm just going to do a bit of an outline of what today's session is going to look like. So I'll pass it on to Michael now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Isabella, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited to dive into this content with you all. Okay, what we're going to be talking about today is, what we're going to do today is first start with a bit of a meditation. We're going to talk about the theory of cognitive flexibility. So this idea that, we can experience challenges in life, but we can meet them with a level of flexibility, and that promotes resilience. We're going to talk about why emotions are important, and then we're going to close out with some tips and tricks that you all can do in really difficult times, such as this pandemic or in your caring role in general. Okay, so actually I want to ask you all a question. How many of you meditate? How many of you know what mindfulness meditation is? Okay. I'm looking through the screens here. Okay. How many of you enjoy meditation? Okay. 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 Keep your hands up if you can. Just going through. How many of you struggle with meditation? Uh-oh. Wait. Okay. There you go. All right. How many of you struggle with meditation? Keep your hands up. Okay. All right. Well, today we're going to, hold on just 1 second. I'm trying to figure out how to do my, there you go, perfect. Today mindfulness meditation traditionally is a form of meditation that gets you to focus on your breath, right? So you sit for 15 or 20 minutes or however long you have, and you intentionally focus on your breath and you bring your attention back to your breath. And for so many people, that's quite challenging. And so to start us off today, what we're going to do is instead of focusing on our breath, we're going to take a moment of appreciation, just for about 2 to 3 minutes. And so as we begin to meditate, I want you to think about the things that you appreciate in your life, right? Perhaps appreciate the chair that you're sitting on, the couch that you're sitting on, the office that you're in, the home that you're in, wherever you are. Just take a moment to just really appreciate that. And then also appreciate your body, right? So notice how your body posture is and how you're sitting in the moment. And so let's do that now, if you're ready, for about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm gonna sit up on my seat. Get comfortable. You can close your eyes if you want. You can keep your eyes open, whatever works for you. I'm going to close my eyes. And I want you to take an intentional breath. What I mean by an intentional breath is to bring your awareness to the fact that you're breathing so you can settle into where you are. And then I want you to give a moment of appreciation for your body. So notice where there are any moments of tension or feelings of tension in your body, and just have a moment of appreciation for it. Send some love and appreciation to those areas. And then I want you to appreciate the chair that you're sitting in. Give a moment of appreciation for the chair. And then if you can extend that from the chair to the desk, the computer that you're using, the office that you're in, the room that you're in, just take a moment to appreciate that as well. And then if you can think of a loved one, your partner, your daughter, your son, your aunt, your uncle, whatever works, think of a family member and send some love and appreciation to them as well. Think about the value that they have in your life and how much you appreciate that they are there for you and that you are there for them. And then if you could wrap your arms around your shoulders, give a little appreciation to yourself as we close out this session. And then bring your attention back to the present moment. Okay. How was that for everyone? Awkward, good, nice, beautiful? Be honest.
It was good. Feel more present.
Awesome. Okay. So with that, we're going to get into the session. If you can go to the next slide. Okay. Now, the ABC model is something that comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. Have people heard of this form of therapy before? And cognitive behavioral therapy says that there's an activating event, and then there's a belief that comes from that event, and then there's a consequence that comes from our belief about that event. What I like to say is that there's an activating event, there's a belief about that event, and then there's an experience. So we begin to experience a whole set of emotions or a whole set of behaviors that come about as a result of those emotions. Everyone knows this, but I think it's important to mention this, that coronavirus is a catalyst, right? It's the activating event, but the experience of the pandemic is different for everyone. And the reason why I thought it was important to mention this is because oftentimes when we refer to the pandemic or the coronavirus, or we're checking in with friends, we'll say, oh my God, isn't this a really tough time? But we have no idea what's going on for them. We have no idea what's going on for them. In their experience, they could have got a promotion, or, everything is fine. And as you all know, here in South Australia, we have a completely different experience of the pandemic than people in the rest of the world. So you might know that I'm from New York City, and my mother and all of my family is in New York City. And so their experience of the pandemic is drastically different from our experience here in South Australia. And understanding that, if you can go to the next slide, Isabel. Okay, understanding that gives us an ability to foster cognitive flexibility, right? This idea that between a stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose how we respond. Does that make sense to everyone? Now, oftentimes we refer to this pandemic as a stressful or, well, it is stressful, but a lot of us refer to it as traumatic, right? But I think what we got to understand is that the actual definition of trauma is that in order for an event to be traumatic, it has to overwhelm your ability to cope. Yeah? So it can be stressful, but if you have the tools and the resources to cope with what's going on, then it does not become overwhelming, and therefore it doesn't become traumatic, right? So another one of my favorite definitions of trauma is by Judith Herman, and it says, trauma is an affiliation of the powerless. So in order to be traumatized, you have to feel utterly powerless. And so what we're going to do today is to figure out, how do we avoid those feelings of powerlessness in a highly stressful experience, such as a coronavirus pandemic or anything that we're experiencing in our current world. Next slide, please. So Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he had to really deal with some really inhumane standards when he was in those concentration camps. And what he noticed was that even in those really ridiculous and tough times, people still had the freedom to choose how they wanted to respond to what was going on, right? So back to the point of the coronavirus is different for everyone, you know, he understood that even though these things are really tough, we have the ability to say, you know what, I can meet this moment with a level of grace or optimism or resiliency if I choose. And he says that that freedom is never taken away from us, ever, no matter what the situation may seem like. Okay, next slide. Now, the way to foster cognitive flexibility is to be open to exploring your thoughts, right? So again, it's the activating event, and then you want to explore how you're meeting the event. So what are my beliefs about what's going on right now in my life? What are my beliefs about the coronavirus pandemic? What are my beliefs about what's going on in my caring world? And what can I do about those beliefs? Is it a matter of changing those beliefs and exploring those beliefs? Is it a matter of meeting my emotional unmet needs, which we'll talk about later on today? And the one way to foster that awareness of the stimulus between, the space between stimulus and response is to mindfully meditate. So in mindfulness meditation, traditionally, like I said, you are sitting in the moment of time and bringing your focus on your breath. And what you'll find is that as you're focusing on your breath, you'll have all these sorts of thoughts, right? All normal. Everyone has really tricky thoughts, or yeah. When you're meditating, you'll discover all these different thoughts. And the reason why mindfulness meditation is important for cognitive flexibility is that you can actually be aware of your thoughts in that moment. You can actually meet your thoughts, be present with your thoughts, and then start to realize, oh, wow, this is making me think this particular way, right? Now, the point of mindfulness meditation is not for you to be with your thoughts, to bring yourself to the present moment, but you're always going to be confronted with thoughts, right? And so as you are confronted with those thoughts, you can say, oh, wow, now I can begin to really explore how to think differently about these situations. Another way to foster cognitive flexibility is to be mindful of the images that you have in your head. So how many of you had breakfast this morning? Okay. If you didn't have breakfast this morning, you definitely had dinner last night, right? So I want you to think about what you had for breakfast this morning or what you had for dinner last night. I want you to think about that. Let me know when you have that in your mind. Now, how do you know that's what you had for breakfast this morning or that's what you had for dinner last night? Because you can see the images in your head, right? And a lot of people aren't aware of the images that they have in their head, and that's why I love that exercise. When it was first done to me, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know. It's an automatic thing, And automatically those images come up every single time that there's an activating event and there's a belief about that event. Anxiety oftentimes is because we have an image in our minds that's giving us fear. Yeah? Okay, on to the next slide. Oh my God, this is my favorite prayer. I usually ask someone to recite it. Let's see if we can do that on this medium here. Is there anyone who wants to recite the Serenity Prayer?
I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you, Norma.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Fantastic, thank you. Every time I hear that prayer, I feel a sense of relief in my chest. And what I always tell people is that you don't necessarily have to believe in a God in order for this prayer to work for you. But what's important is that you focus on the things that you can change, and you let go of the things that you can't, right? And that you know the difference. And so when it comes to this pandemic, for example, we know that we might not have immediate control over when the pandemic ends. But we do know that we have control over how we protect ourselves and our household, right? So we know that we can do our best to get masks and gloves and maybe even goggles. I don't know if you heard, but you can get the virus through your eyes, right? And so we know that we can do what we can to protect ourselves. And we can find peace in doing those things, in protecting ourselves. And that applies to anything in your life. Next slide. Now, rational optimism. So there's a such thing as Pollyanna optimism, right? This belief that, just sort of rose-colored glasses way to look at life, that everything is just going to be fine no matter what. But there was a study conducted by some psychologists who studied prisoners of war who were quite resilient in some really troubling times. And what one of the prisoners said in response to a question of who didn't make it out of these camps of the prison, and the prisoner said, or the prisoner said, the optimists didn't make it out. And that didn't really make a lot of sense because we typically think of optimism as a really great thing. But the optimists that he was talking about weren't able to face reality. Does that make sense? They just were like, oh, we're going to get out, we're going to get out, we're going to get out. They weren't able to face reality. And so rational optimism is the ability to accept what is while also acknowledging its transient nature. Does that make sense? So I can understand that this pandemic is happening, but I also understand that it's changing, that it's ending, right? That this too shall pass. And that gives me a sense of hope. Yeah? Okay, next slide. Now, research shows that reframing our stress as challenges actually helps with our ability to deal with the challenge or with the stress, right? Because remember, trauma comes from being severely overwhelmed, right? So stress is overwhelming, but challenges are manageable, right? So how can we see this pandemic as a challenge? That's my challenge to you all. Anyone know how we can see this pandemic as a challenge?
Just to see how people respond to all the things that they can do and can't do.
Mm-hmm. So a challenge to own the principles of the Serenity Prayer, perhaps? Does that make sense? So to embody the principles of the Serenity Prayer. Anything else?
I think it's a challenge for us to see what's really important in our life and in our world, and the things we can and can't live without.
Absolutely.
A challenge to reconnect with people around us in different ways.
Exactly. So the next slide is, I actually believe that this is a challenge to socially connect, to still connect with our loved ones. How do we connect with our loved ones? And believe it or not, socializing is at an all-time high during this pandemic, right? So I talk to my mother now pretty much every other day or every day sometimes, which was not the case before this pandemic, right? I'm connecting with people on video conferencing calls that I haven't done in years. I met a friend in Bali 2 years ago now, maybe just last year actually. And we talk on the phone constantly, but we haven't connected on video. And it was so beautiful to actually see her face after a year of actually getting to meet her physically in person. And I actually think that it's such a beautiful way, a beautiful sort of, how would you say, effect of this pandemic is that we can actually remain physically distanced, but emotionally connected. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. And another way to look at it as a challenge is to say it's a challenge to keep ourselves safe, right? So it's a challenge to keep ourselves safe, which I think a lot of us here in South Australia have been able to do. Next slide. Now, emotions are important, right? So one of the things that I like to tell people is that really what you want to be able to do is to lean in to your emotions because they're telling you something, right? They're telling you something. And so when you're afraid and you're, trying to figure out what to do, your emotions are telling you to take action to take care of yourself, to keep yourself safe. A lot of times when people study mindfulness or cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of people believe that it's an act of dismissing your emotions. But in actuality, it's about being present with your emotions and doing what you can to meet the needs of your emotions, right? An example outside of this is if someone is feeling lonely, well, their emotions are telling them that they want to feel connected to people, that they want to have better friendships, right? And so then the action is, how do I get to, have those better friendships or better connections with my loved ones? Does that make sense? So see your emotions as data, lean in and say, I'm feeling really terrified in the moment. Explore what you can do to meet that emotional need. Next slide. Resilient people have positive emotions in a really troubling time, right? So quite frankly, we practice humor, right? One of the things that I did the other day is that I looked at some of my favorite comedians on YouTube, right? I love music. One of my favorite singers is Anita Baker, and she has this amazing soothing music, right? Soothing music that really calms me when my nervous system is a bit erratic. Another favorite singer of mine is Janet Jackson, a sister of Michael Jackson. And I love her because her voice is very soothing. So again, I listen to Janet when my nervous system is a bit erratic, right? Increasing positive emotions, another way you can do that is surprise a friend with the gift of appreciation. So I think what we've all realized is that we really love the fact that we're able to connect with people physically, and when we can, we also are able to appreciate the fact that we're able to connect with them virtually. So why not send a friend a gift of appreciation? It doesn't even have to be something that you have to pay for. It could just be a lovely note. I really appreciate your friendship, and this pandemic has made me realize how much I value you as in my life. Does that make sense? And you can also make a list of things that you appreciate in general. So I really appreciate my computer. I really appreciate power and electricity and Wi-Fi, right? Because I don't know if you know, but there was a time when there were reports that perhaps the Wi-Fi would go down because so many people were home using their computers and their Wi-Fi. And that never happened, right? And if it did, we would have been in a really tricky situation. And so I say, appreciate your computer and your Wi-Fi now while you have it, Does that make sense? Next slide. So tips and tricks. So one thing that I particularly love is the mindfulness body scan. So like I said, mindfulness is the ability to sit for 10 or 15 minutes or 20, however long you have, and to be able to bring your awareness to your breath, to keep bringing your awareness to your breath. For people who are highly anxious, that's really, really difficult. So what you can do instead to really get you into that place of being able to meditate is take a mindfulness body scan. So scan your body, be aware of your emotions, and label your emotions, right? Because when you're just in that really highly stressful or anxious state, you're not really using your prefrontal cortex. And all of you have heard of this before, right? The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, right? And so the rational part of your brain comes online when you say, I'm feeling anxious right now. You take your power back, right? I'm a little scared right now. You take your power back in that moment, and your body is just not reacting to those emotions. So a really quick way to do that is to just scan your body and label what you're observing. Another thing is body posture awareness. So when we're scared and we're ready for attack, to attack, literally in a fight, flight, or freeze mode, our body becomes defensive, right? So be mindful of what your body is telling you and how you are feeling in your body in the moment. Next slide. So final tips and tricks: inquire, the ABC model, the activating event, the belief, and the consequence, or as I like to say, the experience. Mindfulness safety walk. This was really revolutionary to me when I did this for the first time a couple of years ago. I was waiting for my partner to come out of a masseuse. He was getting a massage. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I literally just walked around the neighborhood. It was in this really beautiful neighborhood in Sydney. I lived in Sydney at the time. And I was just walking around the neighborhood and I was looking at the trees, and I did this thing where I brought my awareness to the present moment. And I said to myself repeatedly, I'm safe right now. I'm safe right now. I'm safe right now. And that got me to relax in my body, right? It got me out of a state of frenzy and anxiety and allowed me to be with the present moment fully. So if you can, I live by the beach. If any one of you live by the beach, or if you have a park, or walk in your backyard, wherever is best suited for you, just go take a moment, 5 or 10 minutes, and notice the nature and bring your awareness to the fact that you're safe. It's absolutely revolutionary, and I'd love to hear about how that goes for you all. Bring your awareness to your now and take conscious breaths, right? So they always say deep breathing is a really great practice if you're in a state of anxiety, and that's true. But when you breathe, you have to bring your awareness to the now, right? So bring your awareness to the now and take conscious breaths. What do I mean by conscious breaths? Well, feel the breath move through your body, right? As you breathe, actually bring your awareness to the breathing, the breath in your body, right? That's really quite amazing. And finally, practice self-compassion, right? Self-compassion. Because these exercises are kind of difficult at first if you're new to them. So be patient with yourself and practice self-compassion. And with that, we're going to open up for questions. I'm also going to get my charger, so take your time.
I don't really have any questions, but isn't it good to do things like this? It sort of brings it back, the kind of things you already know, but a good reminder.
I don't have any questions. I'm just finding it very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's been a good reminder of taking good care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were the parts that you found interesting, or any particular feedback, or what is challenging for you in adopting these practices?
Finding the time.
I think it's probably more making the time. Sometimes we
yeah.
these things are important. We always feel like the day-to-day stuff is what we need to do. And so you sort of tend to put things like this on the back burner. You should sit, you should take care, just give yourself that moment to breathe, to think, to stop. But I'm far too busy. I've got to get the dishes done. I've got to get that load of washing in. The kids are waiting at school and I've got to get there. And we seem to put all those things first. And I think we forget to put ourselves first. At least this is my own experience. I know I will always put off the things that I should do for myself that will help me to feel calmer and in a better place, because everything else seems far more important. So that's what I think the challenge for myself is having listened to what you've said, Michael, which is it's all just fabulous stuff. And yet at the same time, I think it's probably stuff we know, but we just keep putting last. You know, we know we should stop. We know we should look at, if we're not looking after ourselves, how can we look after anybody else? And yet, as mums, I believe it's just that built-in thing. You just get on with what you've got to do, and that'll, you know, I'll do that later. So my challenge is to go and sit myself down in a minute and just reflect on this session and remind myself to just squeeze that in somewhere. Wash the dishes, but notice washing the dishes. Look out the window, admire that I've got some trees to look at. Take notice of it, not just do the chore. So that's going to be my challenge, and I thank you for reminding me that I am important and I need to take care of myself.
You know, what I like to say to folks is make a priority list, not just a to-do list, right?
Yeah.
So if you can prioritize, put things in order of their importance. And I think, you know, taking at least 15 minutes a day to meditate or have a moment of appreciation or to send a note of appreciation or thanks to a friend, I think that's really incredibly important and something that we would want, not should. I think should is such a strong word, and I think that there's a level of shame in all of this. Just to me, you know, why I love mindfulness and the ability to reflect on my thoughts is because it gives me life, right? It makes me feel really good to practice these things, right? I love the fact that I teach these concepts because I have to do them, right? And so, you know, and when I do them, it feels really good. It feels really, really good. And so, you know, perhaps changing the language around we should and just increase our desire to, right? I want to meditate. I want to meditate. I want to feel good. I want to take a moment for myself every single day because it feels good to do so.
I think, Susan, you had a question?
Not a question, a comment really about one of the things I think is about the I should is taking the 15 minutes or the 20 minutes and sometimes not saying that's too hard. And when I went and saw my GP and talked about the need to do it and my blood pressure, she said, look, you know, taking 2 minutes to just do mindfulness and breathing 5 times a day has just as much impact. And so I think it's that thing about not saying I should do the 20 minutes, but it's going, actually, you know, if I'm sitting in the car waiting for the kids or if the sun's shining and I notice it, just taking a minute to breathe mindfully makes a really big difference. And I've been trying to tie some of the habit stuff. So one of the things I've been doing in the pandemic is every time I wash my hands, practicing mindfulness, going, I'm looking after myself. This is a nurturing thing. I'm giving myself a hand massage. And that's really a positive way for me of making the time. I'm still not making and when I do the 15 minutes, it's fantastic. But building in those small, tiny little bits has really made a difference for me.
Yes. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think if you could sprinkle a bit of mindfulness throughout your day, it certainly does add up and make a tremendous difference. Another mindfulness trick that I do is to listen attentively to someone who's talking to me. So actually hang on their every word.
Okay, I like that.
Hang on their every word. And what you'll find is that the mind clutter, right? All the thoughts that you usually have when someone's talking with you goes away because you're focused on what they're saying. And at least for me, it was a little freaky because the sensation in my body, it just goes from frantic to focus. And it could feel kind of weird at first, but you know, you might be doing it now, just focus on every word that I'm saying, just focus on the words, and you'll notice that there's a shift in your energy. You feel a lot more empowered. So right, if you know, for whatever reason, are not able to do the 15 minutes in the morning, try those little things throughout the day, like washing your hands, being mindful about that. I don't necessarily usually love washing dishes, but when I do it with mindfulness, I feel a lot better. And so, being present with the dishes has really been a tremendous experience for me.
I'm curious about between the event and the actual reaction. That's quite clever.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns about adding mindfulness into your day-to-day?
Meg, your microphone's off.
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to say that I really like the reminder that we have agency in the way we approach things, and in the way we choose to react to something. That's a good reminder, because sometimes you can sort of feel powerless when you're overwhelmed. It's a good reminder to remember that we can choose our reaction to something, and that can affect our.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And I wanted to start it off that way because, like I said, a lot of us are looking at the pandemic and we say this pandemic, and I've actually probably said it a couple times during this call. And there are images in our head as if it's really bad for everyone. And that just isn't the case. It just is not the case. So to be aware of that, to have that cognitive flexibility, allows us to be more truthful and honest with what is actually happening, right? And to have that awareness that for some people, I actually know some people who are making, more money than we ever had because, of this situation. And so they're able to meet their needs as a result of that in such a beautiful way. And so it's a whole plethora of experiences, and to be aware of that and to honestly choose what we want to focus on, I think really is the key, right? I think that's the key to resilience and confidence. What do you want to focus on? And then the last thing I'll say is that
That's too lucky. Yeah,
in the literature, there's a whole bit of studies conducted to talk about how we can avoid compassion fatigue. And the way to avoid compassion fatigue is to see when someone's going through a troubling time and to wish them well, right? So to give them a moment of compassion and envisioning them doing well, sending them love and appreciation, right? And actually having that image of them in our heads instead of the image of them not doing well. Does that make sense? So, I think because a lot of times we feel guilty for taking care of ourselves when other people are suffering, but that we can do to someone is to take care of ourselves and to wish them well.
The other thing I was thinking about was about that moment of taking charge and the challenge. So when my granddaughter is about to is right at that very early beginning stage of a meltdown, and I recognise that, and then actually using my mindfulness to say, what's the challenge right now that she's having and I'm having, how can I see this as a positive challenge rather than, oh my God, here we go again, or so that sort of putting myself in a frame of mind where I'm there to be able to help her, because I've taken the moment to see it as a challenge rather than a tribulation or something.
Yeah, exactly. My mindfulness practice is going to really definitely be upgraded, and I'm looking forward to that challenge. Okay? I really am looking forward to being a father. I have a long way to go, don't worry. Okay, is that it? Any other questions or comments, feedback, any sort of tips that you want in integrating mindfulness in your life? Or
No, thank you.
No? Okay. Well, my gratitude and appreciation for all of you on this call. If you ever need anything, feel free to email me or add me on Facebook and send me a message. Blessings.
I'll just end the session today. I'd just like to say thank you so much, Michael, for being in this Zoom and presenting to everyone here today. It's been amazing to have you and have that refresher, and just everything that you've said has been really, really amazing, and I'm sure we'll all walk away with something that you've said today. And thank you to all the carers here today for joining into the session and being a part of it. And definitely keep out for some more sessions that we're having in the future as well on Zoom. And if you have any other questions that you didn't ask today, just feel free to send me an email as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.